Hello, everyone. So, got a new story. Let's see what's going on with this. So, 30 criticisms that hold women leaders back, according to new research. Um, okay. So, being criticized holds you back as a leader, even though all leaders get criticized because they're leaders. Okay. All right. While women have been making strides to fight for gender equity and equality in the workplace for decades, they still continue to earn less. Okay. Well, I guess they'll keep fighting until all the money is just shared equally amongst people because of their gender. Uh, because we're communists, apparently. Researchers Amy Dial, PhD, Leon, okay, a bunch of people. All right. Amber, they're all female. We were surprised that just how many identity factors women mention. What? What we found was that women can be criticized, critiqued, and held back in their careers for virtually any reason. Well, yes. If you're in any competition, you're going to be critiqued, you're going to be criticized, and you're going to be held back because other people want to beat you. And guess what? Job field is very competitive. It is not a discrimination thing. It's what happens to everybody. You're just the only one complaining about it because you think you're special and it shouldn't happen to you. We conclude that anything about a woman can be used as a surface level criticism hiding the underlying gender bias. Yeah, it's gender bias because no one else gets criticized. You're just in your own special world where it's only happening to you. And when you do it to other people, it's deserved, apparently. Their study looked at 913 women leaders in 4 female-dominated fields: higher education, faith-based nonprofits, law, and healthcare. How are they supposed to make more money if they're going to higher education, nonprofits, law? You could make some money in law, but it's not going to make up the difference. And healthcare, ain't no way. You get well paid in healthcare, but you're making bank. Since gender bias research often focus on male-dominated fields such as STEM, because that's where most of the money is. That's what you were talking about, right? Equality and equity in finances. STEM fields are where all the money goes because those are the required fields. You're like, oh, well, healthcare is required. It's part of science. Doctors, it's part of science. Nursing and all that stuff is just, it's service pretty much. It's not necessary unless you got too many people in the hospital. Uh, using a measurement tool they previously created called the gender bias scale. You just created a scale to measure something. So you saw the thing you wanted to measure and you thought about how can you get the most flattering measurement for your argument, and then created a scale that would achieve that. Is that what you're saying to me, basically? That's probably why you're not in a STEM field, because that doesn't even follow a scientific method. A scale for women leaders. The researchers compared women leaders' perceptions and experiences of bias. So you trying to research bias, you considered the bias things such as someone's experience, someone's perspective, and their experience according to their perspective. So you use bias in order to evaluate bias. Need to get into STEM fields because this pointless shit that you're doing is why you don't earn as much money. Their process involved asking open-ended questions including what types of biases the leaders have faced in the workplace other than gender, and what additional factors had influenced their work experiences. What they found were 30 common personality traits and identity-based characteristics that the women leaders reported were used against them at work. Accent. An accent is going to be something that people are going to be biased against you, because accent is a unique thing. If you're surrounded by a bunch of people that all sounds like you have no accent. But if you're going to a different group of people and you have a different accent, that differentiates you from them. And in order for them to think they know you, they have to actually get to know you. And most people are not going to take their time out of their day to get to know you because you're not that interesting. That goes for everybody. Most people aren't that interesting because the human experience is very limited to a very certain amount of things that you can do, feel, and interact with. So it's very similar and it's not that interesting. So most people aren't going to waste their time trying to get to know you. But if you have a similar accent, a similar background to them, in their minds, they already have an idea of who you are and they know you. And it's a very easy thing for them to just have conversations and whatever and just click. But if you feel or they think that you're very different from them, it's going to feel like a chore to actually get to know you and try to understand where you're coming from and your perspective. So when people are different, if you're wearing a turban or you have a different accent or whatever, different skin color, whatever, it's going to be very hard for people to connect with you. And that is just an obstacle that we are all going to have in life. Sorry. Age also. Age, different ages differentiate you from other people. It's going to make it harder for you to connect with them. Attractiveness. Again, even you ladies discriminate people based on how attractive they are. If the guy is attractive, he's romantic. If he's not attractive, he's creepy. Body size goes into attractiveness. If a guy's tall, great. If he's short, could be your best friend or your brother or whatever. You don't think of him that way. Class. What about it? It obviously differentiates people. That's why it's called class. It's part of the whole definition. Color, already talked about that one. Communication style, that goes into accent, that goes into people being able to connect with you. And actually, if your communication style doesn't match up with the way they understand things, there's going to be a lot of misunderstandings. So cultural identity. What's cultural identity? Are you talking about your, you know what, it's not what I assume it is. It's not going to be like your heritage or your religion or whatever. It's probably something stupid like your sexuality or whatever. I don't know what it is, and I don't care. Dietary restrictions. What about it? What about it? I'm lactose intolerant. Like every time I go somewhere, I have to think about that. And if I went on a date the other day, had to talk about that. It's just going to be a thing. There's going to be many things that differentiate you from people. Education. Yes, if you're talking about work, then yes, your education is going to matter. If you have a lower education than the person that you're supposed to be in charge of, guess what? They're going to discriminate against you. And employment history, also, you're talking about work, so yes, it matters. Ethnicity, also a separating factor that makes you different from the other person, makes it harder for them to identify with you. Gender conformance. What the fuck does that mean? Gender is not a choice, so you don't have to conform. You are or you're not. Health. Yes. If you look sickly, people aren't going to want to talk to you. I don't know. Intellectual ability. No one likes stupid. Marital status. Yes. You're going to have a completely different group of friends and completely different conversation and experience based on whether or not you're married. So nationality. Obviously, it's going to make you different. Occupation. If you're going into a certain job field, with people. Usually you're going to be around people, working with people that have the same job as you or a similar job to you. Occupational position. Yes, that matters. That goes into a whole class and job. Yes. Parental status goes to married, being married. Another thing that makes you different. Personality traits, obviously, physical ability, unless you're playing sports or something. Political preferences, yeah. Pregnancy, yes. Race, religion, resident location, seniority, sexual orientation, veteran status. All of these apply to everybody, regardless of their goddamn. A consistent challenge that emerged for women was their age. Explains deal. Some reported being considered too young to lead, while others said being too old hindered them from advancing in their career. Guess what, ladies? That applies to men as well. Because in order to lead people, you have to gain their respect. And if you look like a young ass dude and you're leading a bunch of grown ass men, they're not going to respect you. So it's not discrimination. Once again, if you get your head out of your own ass and stop thinking the world revolves around you, you'll realize that all the things that you have to complain about, other people experience them too. Parental status. Yes, because it can impede your work. If you have to, I remember working with a guy that he constantly had to go pick up his kids or whatever the hell, talk about his kids. I always had this funny story about what his kid did, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about your kid. I really don't. It's annoying. Choosing to have children or not, that one could be something you do on your own private time, and it shouldn't be affecting your employees unless you tell people about it. What's another point of criticism for women? Listen, having children is a little bit more involved when you're a woman. So if you're planning to have kids, it's going to affect your work. If you don't know whether or not you're going to have kids, it's going to affect your work. And if you say, I don't want to have kids at all, but there's still a possibility that you might have kids in the future, you might change your mind, that's going to affect your work. And potential employers or people that you work with are going to have to consider that. The report stated that higher education leader described how people assume she can't take on a bigger role because of the kids. Of course, they would assume that because a bigger role would consume a lot of your time. You're not going to be able to be there for them as you used to. You're not going to be able to wake up as early as you used to get them to make sure they get to school or whatever, or make them lunch or whatever the hell, because you have a bigger project that's going to consume most of your time. Bigger project, bigger role means less personal time and more goddamn work, which made her feel that she needed to work extra hard. Working extra hard, in your mind, you're probably thinking working extra hard means I'm doing more while I'm at work. What they're thinking is that you're going to have to dedicate more time to work, which means less of your own time going to be available to your kids. Unless you have someone at home, which is why they had it set up before that you had stay-at-home moms. Unless you have someone at home to take care of the kids, it's going to be very limiting for you to chase a high-powered career and also have a family. It's also limiting in that exact same way for men, but luckily they had a system in place for just that situation. People a long time ago, smart people, thought about a way to solve that problem, and then someone else came along and they said that solution was oppression. Pregnancy and even planning to have children was also a point of contention, Specifically for lawyers who participated in the study, many felt their employers doubted they would return after maternity leave because a lot of women don't return to their jobs after having kids, especially if it's a high-powered, high-stress job. You can even think about it this way. There's even a situation where women get really depressed after they're having children. You know what it's called? Postpartum depression. That's a thing that happens just from having the child alone. How do you think they feel about their job afterwards? They don't give a shit about their own kid. Guess how they feel about the job? While some were no longer given desirable assignments and others were forced to quit private practice or work part-time. It's a private practice and you are forced to quit? It sounds like you having a child really affect your work, huh? Sounds like something people should consider. Women of color face discrimination. Of course they do, because they don't do anything else but be fucking victims. In more subtle ways. Oh, it's subtle. Got stealth racists going on. Gotta hate those ninja racists. They're the worst. Other factors like overall health, physical ability, and disabilities were enough to evoke bias. So what you're saying is a lot of Black women are fat. That's exactly what you're saying, because that is true. Researchers found that there was no sweet spot. Sweet spot? What the fuck? What, you were looking for a sweet spot? Is that what this research was about? Where a woman could position herself without being criticized? The only way anybody can position themselves without being criticized is to fuck off. Just go off where no one can see you or even know you. Fuck right off. That's the sweet spot. Women are either too young or too old, too attractive or not attractive enough, too educated or not educated enough. Introverted women were not seen as leaders, or introverted or extroverted women were viewed as aggressive. It's almost like when you work with a large group of people that you have to lead or interact with, large groups of people tend to include small groups of individuals in those groups that disagree with each other. It's almost as if you can't please all of them, and a leader has to know how to navigate that situation. Hence why our politicians are a bunch of liars and they play both sides. They ultimately found that women leaders were never quite right. Oh, but the male leaders are? No one has any complaints about their male leaders, right? Is that what your experience been? No one complains about the men when they lead? Huh. Interesting. And while these problems not only affect women's success in the workplace, business have a financial interest in ensuring gender equity. Organizations that fail to promote and support women in their top roles miss out on performance gains. No, they don't. No, they don't. These things are enforced because of cancel culture, not because they're afraid of missing out on all those gains. Because if that was the case, if you just did better business by just having a bunch of women, people just do that. Because making money is highly competitive. The bad news is that the problem of gender bias is too big for any one person to stop it alone. Sweetheart, you're biased. You're gender biased. In order to stop it, you would have to stop yourself. Because it is a natural human condition. Here's another thing that people are naturally biased towards. People are biased against children. It's harder to gain respect as a child, harder for people to trust you as a child, harder to get a job as a child. Here's another thing that people are naturally biased against: men. It's harder to get a job around children as a man. It's harder to get a teaching job as a man because you're going to be around children. See how that goes? It's harder to gain people's trust as a man because you're more threatening naturally, just because you're a man. See? See how it's not just you? You see, when you stop being such a narcissistic piece of garbage, that you can realize that the rest of the world also have the exact same problem as you, and we can all connect on the fact that we share the same suffering. Who is professor of leadership and what? The bad news that the problem in Geneva is too big. Who is the professor? Was the last name of leadership director of the Beeson International Center for Biblical Preaching and Church Leadership? All right, Beeson. Biblical preaching, the Bible that says that women should be in leadership positions. You want to eliminate gender bias, and you're the professor of leadership and the director of Beeson International Center for Biblical Preaching and Church Leadership. Here are some steps we recommend to you facing gender bias in the workplace. Be prepared. Gender bias happens. Know about it. Blah, 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 blah. Don't take it personally. Good luck with that. Good luck with getting these people to not take it personally. Build a support network. Have people inside and outside of work who you enjoy being with, like friends. Self-care. Life isn't all work, though many organizations, many people see it that way. Invest in hobbies, friends, community, religious groups, and take classes, do sports, whatever helps you disconnect from work. It's not going to make you a better leader in the workplace, though. It's not going to make people trust you and want to promote you to a leadership position when it seems like you're disconnecting from work. You want to work more if you want to get the job as a leader. Know your alternatives. Some workplaces just don't improve, just won't improve, and the time may come when you need to change or have a baby and stop working. Anyways, man, this is, I don't know. I felt like I lost something just reading that. Anyways, till next time.